Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I have two friends of mine, Titus Kahoutek and Katie McKenna. They happen to be business partners and partners in life. And they're what I know about them and what I love about them is they're dedicated, both separately and together, into helping us live our best lives. As you know, Titus was my personal trainer after he was on the podcast talking about physical fitness and nutrition. But Katie is a psychotherapist, and she also has a master's degree in nutrition. So she is a force to be reckoned with. The reason that they're on the podcast today is because we were talking about anxiety and how anxiety is pervasive for everybody, no matter what your age is, no matter what your social status, no matter how much money you have in the bank. And we know that that's true, just listening on the podcast, that anxiety is plaguing the world and it's wreaking havoc. So guys, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really good to be here, Mark.
So, we were talking earlier about, why we wanted to have this conversation, because both of you separately and together work with people's nutrition. You work with people's physical well-being, and you work with their emotional well-being. And you noticed something about anxiety that you wanted to create the Anxiety Experts, which is going to be your website and your launching pad. Why are you going full on into this realm?
Well, part of really what we saw was just Titus and I would come home at the end of the day and realize that the thread moving through everybody, no matter what their maybe diagnosis or complaint is about anxiety. And we would just strategize together, me from the psychotherapist, mental health kind of clinical perspective, and him from the somatic coaching perspective, to really see how a whole person approach to dealing with anxiety would really transform it versus typically in mental health world, we just talk about managing it. And Titus has a lot of great ideas about how to integrate it and heal it that goes beyond just management. And so I really wanted to partner up and have more of my clients benefit from what he knows.
Yeah, I've benefited personally from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, likewise, what I really observed in my practice is that people are really looking for and asking for forward momentum in their life to really accelerate their growth and live their quote unquote best life. And something that was consistently showing up for me, not only in tension patterns in the movement and in the body, but as tension patterns in the personality that don't let that movement happen, are all grounded in these traumas, in deep trauma that we can't get to in a training session. It needs much deeper work and different hands to do that. But when the trauma is healed and cleared, that very trauma becomes their unique gift to kind of offer the world. And then we can work on a coaching perspective on how do you amplify that gift and give it a container for success.
Oh, we're going to put that on a shelf for now, because that's definitely a cool thing to unpack. But I want to go back to anxiety. Mm-hmm. Define it for me, Katie. What is anxiety?
Well, there's many different ways that it's defined. And that's what's a really interesting opportunity is what I want to do is help people make their own definitions. How does anxiety show up in their own life? Because it can look and feel really different. For some people, it's spinning thoughts. For other people, it could be like shortness of breath or fluttering of the heart. A lot of times, to me, though, I really define anxiety as the avoidance or resistance to an emotion or a sensation, something that you don't want to feel, so you try to shove it down. And that effort of shoving it down just can create a lot of anxiety.
So stopping the flow of what might naturally be occurring.
Right. Like a lot of emotions are uncomfortable. A lot of worries are uncomfortable. And so we try to shove them away or ignore them. And they can't be ignored. Our emotional system needs to deliver its information. And if we're blocking it or shoving it down, it finds a way to get our attention. And then it just generalizes into this complaint we call anxiety.
Okay. So how do people know that they have to talk to you about this?
That's a good question. It seems like it's such a common thing that people often talk about it. I would say they feel like they can't stop thinking about whatever it is they're worrying about or generating more and more worry. I think that they recognize that nervous feeling, even sometimes when you wake up in the morning and it stays with you all day long. or the nerves that keep you awake at night and prevent you from sleeping. Those are some of the main things that I hear.
Titus, can you put yourself on mute while Katie's talking? And then when you want to talk, unmute.
Let me see if I can do that.
I'm keeping my finger up here just for my editing, so I know when we're back live.
Sure. So now Titus is muted, but I'm talking. How's that sound?
Perfect. There's an echo on Titus. We can hear you a little bit as an echo when you're talking on his thing. So I just want to make sure that when you're talking, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen when he's talking on yours. So.
Oh, okay, great. And Titus, I think he's gonna. There's another room here that he can be in that might also reduce the echo.
This is just for me for when I'm editing.
Yeah, totally. That makes all kinds of sense.
Boom. You want to turn yourself off?
Yeah, are we clear?
Yep.
How about if I'm talking now? How's that sound?
Perfect.
Okay, great. There we go.
So now. So cool. So more specifically though, my thoughts spin. Sometimes I'm up at night, but when is it just a little bit of anxiety, and when is it something that really needs to be dealt with?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of my favorite approaches in the whole field of a lot of mental health issues is it's not a problem unless it's a problem. So if you're okay with that level of discomfort or the little bit of nerves or anxiety that you experience on a daily basis, and you understand that's just part of being human, that doesn't sound like a problem. Most people have their own intuitive idea when something's getting in their way. And so when the anxiety is too high or too intense that you recognize this is interfering, detracting, or draining your batteries, that's usually the sign that somebody says, hey, I need some help with this. This is painful, or it's problematic.
The rant that I have is constantly is that we actually are in a little low level fight or flight most of the time, as modern people. And we think that's normal. That level of anxiety, that level of heightened awareness constantly is normal. And what I know is it's not. There's a peaceful way of going about life, but I didn't know that it existed before. I know.
Good point.
Right?
There's a huge cultural reward mechanism for living in a sympathetic way, right? Like there's always a lion to run from and a gazelle to kill. And when our nervous system is wired in that consistent sympathetic way, we're constantly tapping our most valuable asset, which is the sympathetic nervous system. Ideally, what we're doing is living in a parasympathetic way. When we downregulate the nervous system through our practices, like you said, Mark, living in this easy way so that when there really is a lion to run from and there really is a gazelle to get after, we can access those excitatory pathways in our body to maximize results. And so it's building this practice relationship of bringing the nervous system down into a relaxed position so that when it's time to go, you can get after it with the sympathetic. And then you're living in a harmony, a good balance of what we can do as humans.
Right. So our bodies are actually meant to be sympathetic for short periods of time to get us out of danger, to catch our food, and then to go back into some sort of equilibrium.
Absolutely. Exactly. And that's the art that most people have forgotten. And they get locked in a sympathetic pattern, and then they get into the anxious thinking. Like the problem starts looking for a problem, and then it's a looped process instead of just letting yourself settle into the now, into your present sensual kind of experience of your senses and awareness of the moment without the attachment to what you just did or what you're about to do.
Right. The holy grail of living free. I do remember when I was suicidal about 10 years ago now, when I was on high for all day, every day. It felt like a bus was going to hit me all day, every day. Like just never a time where I was sweating all the time and I got really thin and my muscles started to contract and I was in PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the far end of the spectrum of what you're talking about. But we can bring it back from a 10 to a 5, and that's where people are like, oh, that's normal life. And it's not.
right? Just
Absolutely.
people also normalize having headaches a lot of time or belly aches. They feel like that's just normal. And I think that just reinforces how far off we've gotten from a baseline of like peaceful, contented, general health. And
Well,
in functional anxiety, when you've really acclimated to operating at like a 5 or a 7 on a 10 scale, that just feels like you're downing shots of espresso all day long. Like it feels a little bit good to a certain degree, but it comes at a high cost.
totally dehydration. So let's move to the value round of this game show. So now that we know it's a problem, and I'm sitting in the car and I'm thinking, yeah, no, I got a little more anxiety than I'm comfortable with, and if there's something different, I'd like to know. What do you suggest to people?
Well, the way Titus and I are operating right now is we're really combining our forces. For me, I can bring in different nutritional testing, from genetics to even saliva testing, to get an idea of like what's going on in the physiology of a body, because anxiety has a physical baseline, and there's certain things that could be triggers there beyond just the mental emotional. And then from there, going into what are the different places where there could be healing from trauma, or being able to teach somebody how to be in their emotional system and use it like a map or sonar, their own personal GPS. But you have to learn how to communicate with that emotional system. And a lot of times people have lost that language or that art of listening inside, because there's kind of too much static and chaos inside. So learning how to listen inside, I think, is the next step.
And
And
that's
then
kind of where I step in, I guess literally in the
exactly, yeah.
conversation and figuratively in the work, is that to connect with the body, so much of the practice of movement has been a process of disconnecting, when there's a huge opportunity to actually tune into and connect to the body. And when we practice our movement patterns, when we practice building strength and connection, we build a physical container that could handle a lot of the emotional agitation. We also build a physical container that can that becomes more aware of the stressors on it, right? So the internal stressors, the mental, emotional, the physical stressors, and how they're actually interacting with the body. Knowing that more and more, listening deeper and deeper, gives us more information to act on and respond with.
Guys, so what can someone do in their car right now?
Oh, while they're in their car while they're driving.
While they're driving, they're anxious. What can they do?
My first step would be to start to do what's called like a gentle inquiry of listing the physical symptoms, and just like, oh, that's my fluttering heart, or oh, that's I'm watching how my lungs are
So
moving.
instead of deciding what that means,
Mm-hmm.
just start to get acquainted with what specifically is happening in your body.
Yeah, naming the physical sensations, because that helps us put ourselves into more of the observer mind, and so that we can kind of watch what's happening with the body. When we're stuck a little bit in the experiencer, that's when we can also generate even more fear. If you're afraid because your heart is beating fast, that's a different thing than just saying, oh, that's an adrenaline release that's making my heart beat fast, and kind of just naming sensations and staying very present in the moment to what's happening in the body.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I would say immediately dropping into the senses right now, like what's actually around you in this moment, not the story that's with the moment, but turning on your actual attention and awareness to seeing where you are right now,
So
and
what you're
actually
saying is
taking the world in.
your head's spinning, and what you want to say is, "Oh, look, there's a tree. Oh, look, there's a child playing.
Exactly,
Oh, look, there's a cool car in front of me."
exactly that. Well said, well said. Exactly.
Okay, so now I've slowed myself down a little bit, and I can think. Give me another tool that might be helpful.
Well, I guess I'll just backtrack a little bit. Peter Levine has done a lot of study on trauma, and when he's originally studied animals, and when animals come out of a traumatic situation, the first thing they do is orient. And that means they look around, they look at the skyline, they look at the tree, they look at what's going on. And so that's what we're pulling from when we say to drop into the present moment, is to
Mm.
actually orient to where you are now and pull yourself out of the mind. The mind can jump us, into the future or into the past. And that's where we can spin all kinds of stories that may be um, excitatory or incorrect. And dropping into the present moment with the sensations is the first step. And from there, I think it's a pretty individual thing. I would almost want to ask you, Mark, like when you're experiencing anxiety, what happens in your body?
So in my body, usually I tighten up. Sometimes it feels like a little asthma, like a little tightness in my chest and my breath.
Okay.
I tighten up.
So then, for you, one of my things that I would suggest is oftentimes people say like, oh, take a deep breath. But really what we often need when we're experiencing anxiety and it's affecting our breath is a big exhale. So more than taking a deep breath, like meaning bringing in a lot of oxygen, what you really need to do is kind of like off gas and like let a big sigh out or exhale a bunch of air. And it's kind of counterintuitive. Most people want to go, but really it's the opposite of more of what your physiology needs is to let out a bunch of air. And that will actually help then you be able to take a deeper breath on the next inhalation.
Wow, you just negated 30 years of my coaching. So take a deep breath. Oh no, take a deep breath and then sigh and let it out and let that anxiety leave your body.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And another really powerful tool is just movement. Literally, if you reach up and wiggle your fingers to the sky and look at your fingers wiggling, and then reach down and touch your toes and feel your feet actually on the earth, on the ground, where you actually are, and feel your physical form. Turn it into that place that you're living from. And the more you connect to that, the more we can act with skill in the next moment. And that's what we want to also start building a skill set of being skillful in the moment, so you're less anxious in moment to moment.
The thing that Titus taught me better than anybody is to have a relationship with my body, with my physiology, and in dancing and going into my basement and dancing and feeling my body again. What did that really does like take me out of my head, gives me a relationship with my whole self. And I'm forever grateful for that, because whenever I'm a little bit nervous or I can't figure out a problem, I throw on a little music and a little bit of dance party, and everything changes.
Amen. The genius is in our body. We already are genius. This intelligent being that we are can be built. It can be cultivated through practice.
Absolutely. So one last question about, maybe something. What are some of the foods that you find are common that add to people's anxiety?
Sugar and caffeine are pretty easy targets.
Alcohol as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want people to say, I try and get people to say that on every single podcast that's like this is, please, sugar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And you know what? It's our terrible relationship to food. It makes it an anxious experience. And really, if we're practicing nourishment, our body responds with more energy and more vitality.
And firsthand, again, with your guidance, Titus, I learned a lot about that, about nourishing my body and not depriving my body. Very, very different relationship. Katie, you have one more parting?
I do, because I can't leave our conversation without taking it just a little bit deeper. We explored that immediate thing of like what's happening with anxiety while I'm driving, and the idea of orientating, naming the sensations, taking a breath, and then building the container of you're using your body and dropping into the body. But anxiety is really our way in to our own self and our own internal language. And the next piece is where it goes and where the transformation really takes shape is to be able to ask yourself some version of maybe what am I afraid of, and what am I avoiding inside? What don't I want to be feeling? Because that's where the revelations start to happen, when there's something organically in our emotional system that wants to be known or understood. And it's up to us to be able to learn to listen to that and respond accordingly to that just organic internal emotional language. And that's really where the art of taking in the anxiety and using it for your own self, that's where the change and the magic really happens. That's about the going deep.
Thanks for doing that, Katie. That was awesome.
I am so appreciative that you added that in. Pen and paper, and the exercise that you just said, I think works wonders, and it's really cheap.
Right.
So that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. So what I want to say is that I don't think there are two people who are better equipped to handle this and to make a difference in the world. So I look forward to the writings, and I look forward to the book, and I look forward to whatever you guys put out on this. Is the new website up yet? The Anxiety Experts?
It is. It's brand new.
So what is the URL?
It's www.theanxietyexperts.com.
And I will put that in the show notes so that people can find you, and that the people, and I'll put all of your social media so people can follow you and learn more about this.
We actually have an upcoming event in Snowgrass Lodge in where is that? In Leavenworth, Washington. And it's a program we put together called The Genius of Anxiety, because a lot of what we're trying to do too is change the narrative of what anxiety is, and recognize that everybody has their specific anxiety, which is their specific things they're hypervigilant about. And then through that hypervigilance, they've probably created all of their success as well. And so it's not a problem, but we can learn to cultivate strength from it as opposed to be oppressed by it. And we're doing a program September 27th through the 28th. It's a beautiful retreat space in Leavenworth, Washington. And we have a number of spots left. I think we have 4 spots left, and it's going to be coming up, and we're excited about it. The Genius of Anxiety.
The Genius of Anxiety. And they can see that on your social media and on your website.
They can.
I can't wait to connect people with you. Both of you, I really appreciate what you do in the world. I appreciate what you bring. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
And to everybody else, thank you for your precious time and attention. I love you, and have a great rest of the day.